So I'll be 52 on Friday, and I've had my fair share of shoulder injuries. AC separations, partial rotator cuff tear. What I've never had though, luckily, is a frozen shoulder. The reality of it is as we get older, it gets harder and harder to maintain our bodies, especially if you've had old injuries in the past. In fact, we've got a whole membership website that we're working on right now. It's called Live Well 50, and it's dedicated to successful aging. Both Elizabeth and I are 52, and we know how hard it is to maintain a healthy, viable life with the least amount of limitations and dysfunction, high levels of cognition, social engagement. If you want to learn more about successful aging, I'll put a link in the description below to Live Well 50. Join the newsletter, and when we do launch the website, you'll definitely get a discounted rate if you're still interested in joining. If you've been diagnosed with a frozen shoulder, we're going to talk about 5 different exercises that you really need to be doing to take that length of rehab from sometimes 2.5 years, hopefully down to cutting that in half. Hey everyone, welcome to the front row. Ed Deboo, physical therapist out of Integrative Physical Therapy. We're going to talk about 5 different exercises that you really need to do if you have been diagnosed with a frozen shoulder. The next question I usually get is, well, Ed, I'm not 100% sure I have a frozen shoulder. So I just did another video, and I'll put a link up above, that talks about 3 classic things to look for if you have a frozen shoulder. And so if you haven't looked at that video yet, and you're watching this one, I'd recommend pausing on this one and going and watching the other one. And I'll tell you why. Because if you don't have a frozen shoulder, the rehab is going to be completely different than if you do have a frozen shoulder. So I don't want you to think of self-diagnosing your frozen shoulder, but maybe it's something else and you're trying these exercises. So go check that video out first. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the planes of motion, so we're on the same page. As I bring my arm up, that is flexion. Bring my arm out to the side, that's abduction. When I bring my arm out this way or out this way is external rotation. And if I go behind my back, this is internal rotation. Now if you have a true frozen shoulder, internal rotation and external rotation are going to be very, very painful. The first motion that you're going to gain back is flexion, or what we call scaption, which is basically a little bit out to the side. So that, if you have a really painful shoulder, that is where you're going to focus most of your work. Because if I don't have very much flexion or scaption, there's no reason why I'm putting myself in a ton of pain by working into internal rotation. That's just my personal thought. So when I see clients, I say, unless you've got maybe 80% of your normal range of motion, let's not worry so much about internal rotation. And we'll do some external rotation, but let's literally work on flexion and abduction first. What's a really common secondary complication of a frozen shoulder is a bunch of muscle guarding, especially through the upper trap. Because remember, our shoulder is tight, so I can only go this far. For example, if my shoulder gets tight, but I want to go higher, so I start lifting it up through the upper trap. So it's really important before we start doing the exercises is that we loosen things up. So this is what we'll do. I want about 2 minutes worth of warm-up first. And within that 2 minutes, we're going to do about 30 seconds of up and down, up and down. And just really tighten them up and let it relax. Tighten up and let it relax. Then what we'll do is we'll pretend my left arm is the involved arm. And let's just say I can only come up about this far, but my right arm I can come all the way up. What we'll do is we'll spend another minute or so of just doing some arm swings. We're going to bring it up, and the other one, up, and the other one. And we're just trying to loosen it up a little bit. We're trying to go up as far as we can. Big sweeping motions of your arms. On the unaffected side, go up as far as you can. Push that frozen shoulder up as far as you can. About a minute or so of that. Then what we'll do is we'll finish up with an exercise called the pendulum. The pendulum works best if you have a little bit of weight in your hand. Once again, my left side's affected here. You can use a chair, a wall, whatever you need to. And just slowly let your arm relax. Give it about 10-15 seconds with the weight, and then use your body to get a little bit of motion out of the arm. We can go up and down. We can go clockwise circles. We can go counterclockwise circles. But the whole idea is to create a little bit of traction, a little bit of separation right at that joint. The first movement we're going to work on is flexion. So in this example, I'm going to say that my left arm is the affected side. So a couple ways in which we can do this. If you don't have a wall available, you can try to bring your affected arm up as far as you can and use your opposite arm to give it a little bit of a boost and then back down again slowly. The key is, if you're working with a true frozen shoulder, it does get a little uncomfortable, and so you have to go into the barrier. So I'm going to bring my arm up as far as I can. I'm going to use my other arm. There it starts to get stiff, and I'm going to go just a little bit into the barrier and then back down again. Into the barrier and back down. My preferred way of doing this is just wall walking. I'm not bringing my arm straight out. It's out just a little bit more in line with my shoulder. And then I can either walk my fingers up this way, or I can go thumbs back and I can glide. The important thing is that as I get closer and as I get higher up, you notice I stepped into the wall and then I step back out again. Now initially you only may be able to go up this far, so we don't have to worry about stepping. But as you get stronger and as you get more flexible, I want you to step in, but then remember to step out, because if you don't, you're going to come to here and that's going to give you all sorts of shoulder pain, and that's not going to feel good. So we're here, arm out to the side just a little bit, and we either walk it up or glide it up, and we reach, we get to the barrier, we go a little bit further into the barrier, create a little bit of discomfort, slide back down. A little bit of pain, and slide back down. That's flexion. You can do it against the wall. You can just do it standing with the other one, or you can do it lying down. Imagine just lying down in bed, having sometimes a PVC pipe or a cane or a stick or a broom handle works really well. So imagine lying down and bringing that arm up as far as you can, going into the barrier, and then coming back down again. But if you can't do it standing up against the wall, that's what I would prefer. Now we're going to get into abduction. So once again, my left arm is the affected side, and we're going to go as far out as we can. And typically, this is what a frozen shoulder abduction movement looks like. You'll notice the excessive shrugging of the shoulder as well too. With the cane here, my right arm is going to be my driver. I got my thumbs up on this hand here, and I'm going to use my right arm to gently pull up. What I want to avoid is a lot of compensatory motion. So I want to keep the shoulder back and down. I might not be able to go up as far, but that's okay. And if I angle it in just a little bit, sometimes I can go a little bit further. If I go directly out at my side, that pinch is right there, but if I bring it in just a little bit, then I can go up a little bit further. So I'll bring it all the way up. There's my barrier, and I'm going to go slightly into the pain, and then back down again. And I'm being mindful that I'm not hiking up that shoulder, because my upper trap is going to be tight enough as it is. The next one we'll do is external rotation. The motion that we're after is out to the side. So I'm going to keep my elbow tucked in. I've got my cane right here, and I'm going to use this hand, and I'm going to slowly push, and I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to hit the barrier, and I'm going to go a little bit further, and then back in again. Barrier, go a little further, and back in. Based upon how tight your shoulder is, sometimes you can get your hand behind your head. And if you can, wiggle it up back there. Maybe you can do this even lying down. And then slowly try to come up here with your head and work on bringing your elbow back, because this is external rotation of that shoulder as well too. Imagine just laying in bed with your hands behind your head. We do this a million times and just take it for granted. But if you have a frozen shoulder, this is a difficult motion to do. So getting your hand behind your head if you can, working it up a little bit, bringing the elbow back is another way that you can do external rotation. And at the end of this video, I'll talk about how many you should do and how often you should do, so don't worry about that right now. We're just going to learn the exercises first. Then what we'll do is we'll finish up with an exercise called the pendulum. The pendulum works best if you have a little bit of weight in your hand. Once again, my left side's affected here. You can use a chair, a wall, whatever you need to, and just slowly let your arm relax. Last exercise we're going to work on is shoulder extension, which is back here. Remember, this is flexion, and this is extension. Shoulder extension is a precursor to internal rotation. And remember, internal rotation is going to be the hardest one to get. You're going to need a stick or a broom handle, PVC pipe. In this example, my right arm is affected, and I'm trying to work it back into extension. It's a little awkward without the cane, so I'm going to grab onto this. I'm going to go as far as I can. That's where it gets tight. And then I push it just a little bit into the barrier. You can adjust your hand position to where it feels better with the least amount of pain. Some people like to clasp it on the end here. I'm fine with that. Whatever gives you the most extension out of your shoulder. Remember, go to the barrier and then go a little bit further into the pain and then back off again. If you're finding the video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications so you never miss another one of our videos. So we've talked about the exercises. Now, how many times a day and how often should I do them? If you were my patient, I would tell you I expect it to be done 3 times a day, and each exercise 20 to 30 repetitions. Now, if you're not sore after you do your exercises, you're probably not pushing it hard enough. Remember, we have to exercise into the barrier just a little bit. But how do I know if it's too much? An hour after you finish exercising, your pain level should be back down to baseline. So for example, before I start exercising my shoulder, it's about a 2/10 kind of pain. It's just a little bit achy today. I go through my warm-ups, I do my pendulum, I do the cane, the wall walking, everything else, and now I'm done with my exercises, and that 2 just went up to a 5. Okay, so then I'm going to remember, well, Ed said it needs to be a little bit sore after I'm done. It means I'm actually doing something. Now, an hour later, my pain should be back down to a 2. If it's still hovering up at that 4 level, then what I did was just too much. Let it settle down, take a day off, and then when you come back to the exercises, just tone down the intensity. On the other side, if you finish the exercises and it's already down to a 2 just almost right away, then you could have probably pushed it just a little bit more. Because not that I want you to be in pain, but if we truly want to take that 3-year period for a frozen shoulder to recover and to bring it down more into that anywhere from 3 to 6 month mark, we really do have to push it just a little bit. Posture is extremely important for your shoulder. I talk a lot about scapula in the back pocket if you're a patient of mine in the clinic. If you want to learn more about how to improve your posture as well as your shoulder health, I've got a couple classes on Udemy that talk specifically about that, and I'll put those links down below. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them down below, and good luck with your shoulder.